Absolutely not, Kyle. Just because you show up to the studio with an oversized belt buckle is not gonna prompt me to call you Cowpoke. That is not your nickname, and it never will be, Kyle. You have no skills of a cowboy. Frankly, I don't think you've ever been to a rodeo. But you know what, Kyle? Neither have I. DarbyCast, WildCard Friday. Kyle and I, we were just talking about skills, outfits. Does the belt buckle make the man? Does the man make the belt buckle? These sorts of questions. Important, right? There's a lot of identity crises happening in people these days in the States. Gosh. And there are bigger proverbial fish to fry. Catfish. Right? Cowboy Kyle, you idiot. I've never had catfish. I don't plan on having it anytime soon. You like catfish? That's disgusting, Kyle, okay? That's really gross. But all these identity crises are manifesting themselves in pretty monumental ways. You see that happening on Twitter as the meltdowns continue. People are pretty upset that Elon, who, like I said before, might not be on the level. A billionaire on the world stage. You don't get to the world stage if there aren't some checks and balances where it's like, hey, you can't just go run your entire program. And we all know this. The real string pullers retain their anonymity. And for good reason. I wouldn't want to be known as the guy or lady, here we go, ladies, who was up to some major fuckery. But identity crises. And people seem to have forgotten that there could be food shortages. The currency's tanking. A lot of people aren't doing well. All the while, you've got idiots out there, and we'll use Kyle as an example for this one. Sorry, Kyle, but you kind of put yourself in the crosshairs. Saying, I want to be this, I want to be that. You got to treat me like a cowboy. And Kyle, thank goodness you didn't roll into the studio saying, you got to treat me like a cowgirl. Because, boy, would that be even more concerning. Right? You're nodding your head in agreement. You get it at this point. Kyle, buy cowboy boots, get the hat. Walk around in them, but you're not fooling anybody, okay? You are an audio engineer for one of the greatest podcasts to ever exist. Isn't that enough, Kyle? Hey, look at me. Halloween, once a year. Knock yourself out, man. Get a pair of cap guns. Just start blasting. Go into a Walmart. Say yippee-ki-yay. I endorse that fully, Kyle. You play dress up as much as you want, so long as it's only once a year. But this gets us into a deeper conversation about rodeos, obviously. Let's take our customary time out for the new listeners. If you're new, I'm going to give you an honest, heartfelt piece of coaching and say you should probably get the fuck out of here. This wonderful show is for heroes. It's for people who are trying to seek out what's really going on and then elevate those around them. That being said, if that describes you, or if that just entered your ear holes and all of a sudden you were like, wait a second, son of a bitch, I wouldn't mind that. Then you stick around. But if you're just a normie, just some average idiot, walking around, big old Johnny Bag of Donuts. No knock on donuts, but Johnny Bag of Donuts, that's an archetype that I'm not thrilled about, nor is anybody else. Just coasting, not putting the nose to the grindstone. We've got a lot of great opportunities out in this world of ours because chaotic times, tumultuous times. And things could get a lot worse. But they also could get a lot better. Wow, right? Had you considered that? Let me just take a time out. Let me take a full. This is not a 20-second timeout. This is a full. Let me remind you, there are no political solutions to the way things are going. If you're listening to this, you probably know that you are entirely politically disenfranchised. Your vote doesn't matter. The program that's being run, you have no say in it. In fact, there was a study that was done by Princeton, and their conclusions were that no matter what the will of the American people is, it has little to no effect on policy, either foreign or domestic. And that shouldn't come as a surprise to you. It's all kind of one big reality show. You ever notice that the news cycle is like tabloid level nonsense? Who's angry at who? What's like all messed up? It's never about anything substantial. Never about economics. It's never about the decline of the family unit. It's never about objective morality. It's never about spiritual ascension. Alyssa Milano said that Bradley Cooper was not okay this one time. That's kind of the level that we're getting into. And then like U.S. politicians weigh in on it. And it's like, this isn't what we installed you to do, Mitt Romney. Okay, pal. Fuck Mitt Romney, by the way. What a joke of a person. But let's keep going, because like I was saying, and like you know, political solutions not in the cards. Cultural solutions, maybe some with unconventional methodology. That sound a little bit more enticing to you? Because it does to me. And that's what I deliver to you on a weekly basis. Sure, there are prerequisite personal steps that one needs to take to keep themselves afloat in this wacky, wild world of ours. However, you go back to other episodes and you figure out what those steps are. I'm not going to tell you what episodes they are. Why rob you of the treasure hunt? Not my speed. But there are solutions that exist. They're a little extreme. I will have you know that. But I never claimed to be casual. Boy, did I not. And that's not what is going to right the ship. So, Kyle, in honor of your nonsense that you came into the studio with this morning, my gosh, Kyle, really out of left field. You wanted to be called Cowpoke. Take a second, man. When was the last time you just like drank a glass of water and kind of had a deep think and said, I am who I am. There are things I can change about myself, but cowboy, too much of a stretch. What skills do you have, Kyle, that would put you front and center of a rodeo podium? The answer is zero, Kyle. Let me just beat you to the punch, you idiot. Sorry, I'm going way too hard on you. Check that. I'm not sorry, Kyle. You deserve this. But let's talk about the rodeo, which in a lot of ways is one of the last bastions of American freedom that exists in this world of ours. And it's time that we do a compare and contrast between rodeo people and city folk. City folk are garbage. We know this. It's not entirely their fault, but they should know by now that they are living in a Babylonian-style nightmare situation, and that if they wanted to exit that situation, they would leave. I have no sympathy for anybody who's like still living in a city and then issuing complaints and being like, I got stabbed by a bunch of rusty heroin needles when I was walking down the street, and then I stepped in human feces. And then I got groped by a pack of adult men who were dressed as dogs. And they licked my face. It's like, well, you remove yourself from that arena, and that doesn't necessarily happen to you anymore. That's never happened to me. I don't live in a big city, so I've never stepped in human feces. And I think that's a decent indicator that my life's going okay. Sure, not everything's perfect. But how do you bounce back from that? You just slip and fall in some human poo? Very concerning stuff. But let's do a major compare and contrast. Two very different lifestyles. This is going to remind a lot of the long-term listeners of an episode that occurred many moons ago. What's that episode entitled? That's right. We Have a T-Rex. Boy, is that a really good episode. That was when I was just so caffeinated for every DarbyCast. I was not centered on all those, but it played in a huge way. But let's do a compare and contrast between a rodeo appropriate person, not you, Kyle, remember, but let's focus in for a second on a guy named Mitch. If your name is Mitch, chances are rodeos are one of your go-tos. And if your name is Mitch and you haven't been to a rodeo ever, know that you would be a smash hit if you showed up. You buy that ticket. They ask for your ID. And you say, I didn't bring it. And they say, well, what's your name? Say, Mitch. And you say, here's a VIP ticket, comped. Would you like a tour of the stables? Would you like to be in the competition, Mitch? You seem like a pretty athletic and rugged person. Fun fact, there are not people in the world named Mitch who are flimsy at all. What's in a name? A lot. We've been over this on the DarbyCast time and time again. You name a kid Mitch, he's going places. What are those places? The rodeo and maybe a ranch. So let's continue tracking with Mitch. Mitch shows up at the rodeo. He gets the royal treatment. No surprises there. It's the right thing to do. Gets toured around by a chick named Darlene. And boy, does she sound hot, right? What's in a name? Darlene? Holy hell, right? Talk about a smoke show. She's got that southern draw. She's still got her V card. She's like 24 and a half. And she's eyeballing Mitch in a huge way. Mitch is whatever age you want Mitch to be. Darlene's into it. In your mind's eye, give Mitch an age and then adjust the facial hair to whatever length you think makes the most sense. And then kind of self-insert into the world of Mitch, okay? This is a little bit of a rodeo guided meditation, which isn't typical in most guided meditations, in case you were wondering. But pretend your name was Mitch. And if you're struggling to put yourself in that space, imagine you were wearing a sheriff's badge that was custom crafted, laser etched on the spot that said, howdy, name's Mitch. That feels pretty good, right? If you're a bro, if you're a chick, self-insert into the space of Darlene. You're wearing some kind of plaid shirt that's not buttoned up. It's tied, and your jugs look better than they've ever looked. Now that's a guided meditation, isn't it? We're not changing the size of your cans, babe. What we're doing is we're showing them off in the way they deserve. I don't care how busty you are or how lean you are, you're looking like a 10. And you're also wearing one of those sheriff badges. You're cruising around with this guy named Mitch. You're saying, this is the horse, Mitch. And then if you're in the position of Mitch, you take your index finger, you point at the horse while looking Darlene in the eye, and then you point at your package. And you go back and forth for a time that's a little too long. You go back and forth, kind of pointing assertively until she understands that, like, whoa, this guy's got a unit. That feels pretty good, right? City folk have no idea what this feels like. Fun fact, guys who live in cities, very undersized weens. That's just how it goes. And it didn't start like that, but as soon as you move to a city, your ween shrinks. Nobody's talking about this. Nobody. Not a single person. But what you enjoy about the DarbyCast is that you're going to get a lot of info. Rodeo tour continues. Darlene, if you're a chick listening to this, if you're a gal and you're self-inserting into what's going on in this program, imagine you're wearing jean shorts. Some of the best jean shorts ever manufactured. It's like they were fashioned by an angel just for you. If you're a bro and you're listening to this and you're in the cowboy boots of Mitch, as good as Darlene's looking, you're on a mission, and that's to re-engage the American spirit within your own heart so you don't get distracted. You start assessing the cattle for the bull riding competition. You say, boy, that one looks fierce. Darlene does not disagree with you. Now let's pivot into city life, okay? And let's throw it all the way back to episode 2 and give you the name. And this is going to make you feel like garbage, by the way, when you self-insert into this lifestyle. But let's borrow the name that really kicked the DarbyCast off in a huge way. What's that name? Long-time listeners know. Episode 2? That's right. Todd. Imagine your name is Todd. Now clean the barf off of your own chest, because I know that even hearing that name induces extreme nausea and caused a lot of people to upchuck all over themselves. What does your life look like if your name is Todd? You wake up in the morning, roll out of bed, your body hurts. You have no muscle on your frame. You have sports injuries, and you've never played sports. How does that work? Unclear, but that's your life. You high-five a fathead of Fauci. And what does this fathead of Fauci really look like? Fauci's wearing a deep V-neck, and it's got a really weird pattern of Joe Biden and his face plastered all over it. If your name is Todd, and you're really putting yourself into the shoes of really most guys who live in cities, you spend a lot of time staring at that Fauci fathead, and you have really inappropriate thoughts about it. Say, I wish Fauci would just show up out of nowhere and treat me wrong. It's like, Todd, that's not okay. That isn't. Ladies listening to this right now are saying, I want to live in the city. Yuck, right? Get your head out of the gutter. But in this scenario, you are the neighbor of Todd and your name is Carrie. Kind of like a Carrie Bradshaw, a complete tramp. You moved to the big city. You told your dad to go fuck himself when he was like, I don't think you should move into hell on earth because it's not safe. And I get the sense that everything your mother and I did raising you is going to go down the drain as soon as you move to Chicago. Those parents are not wrong. Allowing your daughter to try to hack it as a blogger in a city, really rough, okay? No matter how much they tell you, I want to do this, Dad, you got to say, Carrie, let me tell you how this is going to go for you. You're going to spend a decade of your life, really some of your best years, getting tanked all the time. You're going to be spending time with really depressed chicks who are quote unquote sassy. What does that mean, Carrie? It means they're really depressed and they're going to try to drag you down to their level, all the while suggesting that they have full and rich lives because they eat avocado toast and go to brunch 4 times a week. By year 5, Carrie, you're going to be looking very dehydrated from the persistent volume of alcohol that you find yourself drowning yourself in to cope with the fact that you don't know a lot of people and you feel threatened all the time. People are mean mugging you and you don't know whether they want to beat you senseless or treat you inappropriately in terms of romantic relations, if we could even call it such a thing. Carrie, dating apps will be the bane of your existence. Okay. You will get passed around like the primary peace pipe at a Native American convention. Carrie will naturally ask her father, "What's a Native American convention?" And that's when Carrie's father's going to say, "Shut up, Carrie. I'm trying to tell you about some really dangerous stuff. And I'm also trying to prevent you from becoming a wreck." Okay. And as we know, a lot of these gals ended up disregarding any coaching from their fathers, even their mothers with the apprehension saying, "Carrie, I don't want this life for you. I've lived a life. I'm a dignified mother. I love my family, but you're going to end up sour and dry, Carrie. I need you to know this." Then Carrie's going to say, "Well, my name's the same as Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City." And that's when any good parent would look their daughter in the eye and say, "Well, you know, Sex and the City was written by a gay man, and that Sex and the City was in fact about the promiscuous lifestyles of gay men living in a city, but they just cast it with female characters to subvert the minds of almost an entire generation of women who subscribe to premium television." Lesser known fact, but parents should be telling their daughters that if their daughters say, "Hey, I want to move to the big city. Maybe I'll meet some A-plus guy named Todd." That's when, as a parent, you have to sit your daughter down and say, "There's no guy in this world named Todd that's even remotely in the zip code of okay, you idiot. I take no pleasure in telling you that you're way out of bounds here, babe, but what kind of media have you been consuming that would suggest that there could be a guy named Todd that would do anything for you in a way that would elevate you to the height of your potential femininity and sense of meaning and belonging? It's just not mathematically possible." Okay, lovely daughter of ours. All right, now let's pivot back to the rodeo, where you've got Mitch and Darlene who are hitting it off in a huge way. Imagine what that would feel like if you're single and you met somebody who just got you and was like, "I'm not okay with a lot of the things going on in this world, but thank goodness that there are American flags all around us, and the people who are flooding this stadium with not only good vibes, but just their bodies, they seem like honest Christians. And I'd be more than okay eating a hot dog alongside any one of them and washing it down with a cold beer or a fresh squeezed lemonade. No problems with either of those things at a rodeo." So back to the dynamic duo of Mitch and Darlene. You are now entering a different part of the backstage experience of the rodeo. What's this place? It's where they have all the tractors. Darlene, you know what Darlene says to Mitch? "Go ahead. You can sit in the seat of any one of these. The keys are in there. Drive it around." What would that feel like? Drive a tractor around for a little bit? Haul a couple things? Boy, is that different from a lot of people's day to day. Darlene says, "Mitch, hitch this tractor to any trailer you find and drive around a little bit. You deserve this." Whew, how good does that feel? How good does that feel? And you didn't even need Darlene's permission, but what is she actually giving you? Extreme encouragement. And we all like that, don't we, fellas? When you've got an A-plus lady in your life who's no stranger to signing off, co-signing on all your good ideas, and even some of your questionable ones, unified front. So you drive around this tractor, you're looking good. Over a loudspeaker, you hear a booming voice. Ladies and gentlemen, take your seats. The rodeo is about to begin. Darlene takes you by the hand. She says, I know of a special seat that is for you. It's next to me. Wow, right? Talk about a connection, or a lot of people are feeling disconnected. There are a few things in this world that can make a guy or a gal feel more connected than a little bit of hand-holding at an explicitly American sporting event. And at this point, there's like two of them. What are those? Rodeo, like I'm talking about, and a monster truck rally. And let me give you a little bit of honesty out of me personally, a little bit of vulnerability. I've never been to a rodeo and I've never been to a monster truck rally. And some of you are asking, how do you know? How do you know that these things are what they are? It's called extreme intuition. And that's something that people really have come to appreciate and really treasure about this entire podcast. They say, you're just dead on about just about most things. And I can't argue with that. I really can't. Everybody takes their seats at the rodeo. The MC, Mac, M-A-C-K, what does he do? He motions over to Darlene and says, I have a feeling you've got a set of pipes on you. Why don't you do us all a solid, huh, babe? Why don't you sing the national anthem? And the greatest anthem ever sung goes down. People are tearing up. This is an open ceiling, retractable ceiling style rodeo situation. And at the end, they release a bunch of bald eagles that fly around the stadium. You make eye contact with each and every one of them, and you have a moment with all of them and each of them. Your heart swells with pride, a little bit of nostalgia. You remember times when the leadership class of the United States was not rife with cowards, criminals, and traitors. You say, I have a dream that one day these people will pay in a huge way for all that they've put this country through. Darlene, who is taking her seat next to you, turns to you and says, I want what you want. Wow, right? What does that feel like? Let's go back to Todd and Carrie, those train wrecks. Todd, after groping his fat head of Fauci, what does he do? Has a panic attack. Totally unprompted. That's just how his brain is wired at this point. Todd takes a lot of meds, and none of them are doing what they're supposed to. Todd is taking meds to counteract the side effect of other meds, and that's taking place about eightfold. Todd's taking about 9 different meds, and 8 of them are just trying to counteract the side effects of the Xanax that he takes on a daily basis. Does Todd eat cereal in the morning? No, he eats pills with a spoon with almond milk. Gross, right? Almond milk? It's okay. It's not the best. What's Carrie doing? Well, she set out to be a blogger about love, just lockstep with all things Sex in the City. So to inspire herself, she takes a bong load out of the filthiest bong. Her whole apartment smells like stale bong water because she hasn't cleaned this bong in forever. Thing is cakey and moldy, but she's like, this is my process. I'm an artist. It's like, Carrie, no, you're not. Okay? You are a very dysfunctional slut. And it's high time that you start kind of having a little bit of, why don't you meet yourself where you're at? Okay, Carrie? But Carrie sits down at the keyboard and she's like, okay, need to write. Hammers out one sentence. What's that sentence? You're asking? She writes, As we're approaching World War III, I can't help but think, what about World War Me? And she's proud of that. Todd and Carrie exit their apartments, and they are harassed aggressively by some of the largest rats you've ever seen in your entire life. Think about the Ninja Turtles and think about Master Splinter. At least that rat knew karate and mentorship. Think about the rats in any major metropolitan area. What are they bringing to the table? Certainly not Master Splinter vibes. They are bringing rabies and just a general vibe of inappropriateness. We don't like that. We don't like that one bit. So Todd steps out of his apartment. So does Carrie. Todd's got a crush on Carrie for some reason. Carrie doesn't want to give Todd the time of day because she thinks she's above Todd, even though she is an absolute pigeon of a catch. She is a gutter bird with an inflated sense of self. Todd wants to put a ring on Carrie someday, but he can't even make eye contact with her. He's too ashamed of everything about himself. It's like, Todd, I get it. You're a bad dude and you're kind of a creep. But it's on this day that Todd looks at Carrie and something has changed. The meds are hitting Todd just right. And he looks at Carrie and says, do you want to get together tonight? Maybe smoke some weed and watch some violent pornography? Carrie says, hell yeah. Yeah. Somewhere, Carrie's parents know that nothing's okay with their daughter. And they're like, what do we do? What the fuck do we do? But that's life, I guess, for parents who have children living in cities or having their go of it, trying to make it. Carrie accepts Todd's invitation. Todd marches straight back into his apartment, not sure how to keep himself contained emotionally, so he starts lovingly stroking the pouchy fathead, spending way too much time touching the nipple region of this inanimate 2D representation of one of the worst public figures in American history. Good job, Todd. Eyes on the prize, right? Carrie goes and gets drunk at 11 a.m. with her alleged friends. They all share stories about how their body counts are in the triple digits, and they ask each other for recommendations on how to get higher dosages of Valtrex to combat their raging herpes. It's nice to be able to bounce stuff off your friends, but pretty upsetting that that's the subject matter, right? It'd be much nicer to be like, hey, do you know a local arts and crafts shop? I'm thinking about re-engaging my creative side. But no, we need to get some Coke and more Valtrex. Ugh. Rough, right? It's pretty rough. Fast forward to the evening. This is Todd's big night. He takes a lot of Xanax. Fires up Netflix. Way too many choices. Todd struggles. Carrie gets over there, and she doesn't even want to watch the movie. She's already pre-gamed with a bottle of Chardonnay, shows up tanked. Todd presents her with a crack pipe, paid for by the Biden administration. They get really blitzed, and then they have emotionless and raunchy sodomy. They don't even kiss. Not once. And they don't make eye contact the entire time. It is the most autistic sexual encounter I could ever imagine. This is what people in cities are doing, by the way. If you didn't know, autistic hookups are the baseline. That's the norm. AutisticHookups.net. Where's that app? Where's that website? Kyle, buy that? All the while, Todd and Carrie have convinced themselves that what they're participating in is in fact culture. And that it's progressive and that everybody else needs to just enjoy life the way they are and get with the times. Okay, now let's pivot back to the rodeo. General air of patriotism is off the charts in this space. Every 37 minutes or so, somebody gets a USA chant going, and everybody is excited about it. Everybody joins in. The MC at one point catches eyes with you, remember, Mitch, and says, "Everybody, I'd like to stop the action for a second. Let's take a moment. I want to introduce you to a close personal friend of mine. His name is Mitch. He's a really good dude." Everybody cheers. Everybody's going insane. They're like, "It's a Mitch! It's Mitch!" Doesn't that feel good? They know what kind of guy you are. Then the MC's like, "And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the great gal he's with. Let's give it up for Darlene, all right." Everybody in the crowd is doing that like really cool whistle. They stick their hand in their mouth and it's just like a shrill noise, but it's full of approval. That's what that whistle is about. MC turns to Mitch, says, "Do you want to ride a bucking bronco?" As Mitch, you say, "I've never done that before." Then all of a sudden, quietly, but increasing in volume, quite steadily, crowd starts chanting, "Mitch, Mitch, 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 Mitch." And your heart swells with potential. You say, "I'm in." They saddle you up on a really out of control Mustang. And what do? You set the world record for time spent on a bucking bronco. You ride that thing until it dies of exhaustion and collapses into a heap. And then Darlene kisses you on the cheek. And what does she say? "I think we should go to church tomorrow. After all, today's Saturday and tomorrow's Sunday. I know a great spot." And what does a guy like Mitch say in this situation? "I'll pick you up at 8:30 for the 10 a.m. service. We're going to have a date beforehand because I want to continue connecting with you. I want to know things about you. Like what makes you so great and wholesome, beautiful, dynamic." What does Darlene say to that? "You have my attention, Mitch," in a huge way. That's what any gal would say in that situation. When you ride a beast until it dies in a competitive way, ladies love that. If you're a lady listening to this right now, boy, did you just quietly nod your head in agreement. So that is actually on my top 3 things I look for in a guy. Is a guy who can conquer beasts in a competition style setting. Good job. Let's fast forward to Sunday morning with Todd and Carrie. They have a really awkward wake-up session. They look at each other and they're just like, "Ha, ha, hey neighbor." They have another round of really impersonal, physical romance, if you can call it that. Romance isn't part of this equation. Carrie runs next door. As she's in the hallway, she trips over a rat. The rat bites her. She gets rabies. She tries to escape. More rats bite her. She gets a lot of rabies. She gets to her apartment, downs a bunch of Valtrex, and then takes a bong load. And she's like, I can't write today. My heart's not in it. She goes back and she's like, "Hey, Todd." Todd's like watching anime at this point. It's like, whoa, Todd, you're more upside down and twisted than I could have ever imagined. But these two lovebirds say, "Hey, let's go to a beer garden." There's no churches in cities these days because the cities are fully run by Satan himself. And he wouldn't like a church. No, he wouldn't. So Todd and Carrie, they go to a beer garden. Boy, do they get hammered. 11 in the morning. They buy some novelty lederhosen. And then Carrie leaves with some other dude that she met on a dating app. And Todd is left there at this beer garden. There's a bunch of hipsters who are screaming the song "We're Not Gonna Take It," even though it's not playing on any speakers. And Todd wants to end it. Just call it a life. And can you really blame him? He's not living a life worth living. Todd trudges home, steps in a lot of human poo. He gets back into his apartment and says, "At least I get to go to work on Monday and go to a diversity seminar and hear about how I'm one of the biggest problems in the world." Carrie's parents call her later in the day, say, "Hey, honey, how are you?" And she says, "Fuck you. Mom and Dad, you don't understand me." It's like, "Whoa, Carrie, are you doing okay?" And what does Carrie say to her folks? She says, "I'm doing amazing, okay? I'm amazing. I'm better than I've ever been." All the while, Carrie's parents know that realistically, they should take a trip to go see their daughter, throw her in a straitjacket, and take her to a rodeo. See if they could course correct. Sure, herpes is for life. But this mindset that she's got, thinking that getting tanked all the time and writing these articles that nobody reads is like her dream life. You need to intervene in these people's lives. If you're a parent, and I know a lot of the DarbyCast listeners are, you're hearing this and you're asking your spouse some questions, because if you're doing things right as a DarbyCast doctor, you're actually listening to the DarbyCast with your significant other. And if you've got daughters, you're probably asking questions. You say, how do we prevent this? It's simple. You never let them move to a city. And you certainly don't let them go to college. There was a time when gals going to college was a good call. Really cool. But those days are over. College is corrupting the minds of the youth. In fact, I don't even know if you send a dude to college at this point. Like, it is not safe to send kids to college. It's dangerous. They will be poisoned in terms of the information going into their mind, but they will also be poisoned with what's going into their body. And if you listen to this and you're saying, no, they need higher education, it's like higher education hasn't existed for quite some time. The commies, these godforsaken Reds, have taken over most institutions. So unless you're sending your kids to a Christian university explicitly, followers of JC, and also staying connected with your progeny, I would advise against it. I would advise against sending your kids off to a place where they will become spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically corrupted. That's just my 2 cents. You don't have to necessarily agree with that. But just know that when you send them into that arena, they might get the idea that moving to a big city is in fact the right thing to do. And if you have been listening carefully, you understand that my description of these 2 people, Carrie and Todd, is frighteningly on point. Now let's pivot back to Mitch and Darlene, who are really hitting it off at breakfast. Mitch looks Darlene in the eye and says, "What are your dreams?" And she says, "I'm really glad you asked me a question like that." Darlene says, "I want to live a life where I feel connected to my heart, to my faith, and to the right kind of guy. I want to have 6 children, and I want them to grow up in a place where they can feel like patriots." Boy, is that music to everybody's ears hearing something like that. We need rodeos. That's kind of the big takeaway that you should be having from an episode like this. We need to seek out the salvageable individuals from cities, encourage them to put on the straitjacket because they're crazy. Be like, we're going to nurse you back to health, one rodeo at a time. Maybe mix in a monster truck rally. We're going to get you an oversized belt buckle. We're not going to start calling you a cowboy or a cowgirl, but we're just going to give you a taste of what it means to have a sustainable culture and to be enjoyed by the people around you and to also enjoy them right back. You're not going to be living this anonymous lifestyle of isolated hedonism. What you're going to be feeling is a sense of community. And you're going to be wearing that straitjacket for as long as it takes, because you might have a couple meltdowns. You take a city person to a rodeo, boy, are they going to be tempted to go on a dating app. And that's why you got to remove their ability to interface with a piece of technology, the straitjacket. You say, there are no iPads here. Todd, you stupid son of a bitch. Carrie, pay attention. You see those two people over there? You see Darlene? Do you see Mitch? You idiot. And after you take a Todd, after you take a Carrie to enough rodeos, maybe things change. And the unfortunate reality is it might be too late for some of these people to course correct. But this problem, if you can't you can't rope and wrangle these city folk and put them in a straitjacket, hog tie them, because you are a pro rodeo skilled person, you can't do that. This problem's self-correcting because these people are all self-destructing right now. If you know anybody who lives in a city or even near a city, like a big city, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, their mental health is in shambles. And they don't really get it, do they? It's simply by putting themselves in that space that they are in the realm of the devil himself. Cities are Satan adjacent, if not Satan direct. SatanDirect.com. Do you want to figure out whether this episode is hyperbolic or accurate? If you want to find out whether it's accurate, check that, how accurate it is. Just talk to somebody who's ever lived in a city and be like, you have herpes, right? And like some diagnosable disorders. It's not your fault, but it like kind of is. People need to hit the eject button. There are people who are in such extreme denial that hearing an episode like this, if they lived in a city, they're like, no, my name's Todd, I'm a good dude. It's like, Todd, you're so wrong, man. There are people who have convinced themselves that like living in a modern day city amidst rats and trash is the thriving culture. Like, this place really has a pulse. It's like, what are you talking about? Come on. What I'm saying to you as a DarbyCast doctor is if you think that there's somebody worth saving in a city, maybe you reach out to them, maybe you send them this episode, maybe you say, hey, you stupid son of a bitch, or hey, you skank, I'm going to airmail you a straitjacket and I need you to put it on. I'll come pick you up. Then the first place we're going is a rodeo in Tennessee. No, we're not going to Nashville because that place has been overrun by the kind of people that have contributed to making you the way you are. Sure, there's plenty of red-blooded Americans in the Nashville area, but there's also an influx of these demon folk. There's a lot of different messages baked into this proverbial cake. Don't watch Sex and the City. Don't name your kid Todd. If your daughter wants to move to a city, throw her in a dungeon until she comes to her senses. There used to be a time where American culture and American identity was tied to the right things. It wasn't all about drugs and consumerism and plowing strangers and riding the public transit and trying to avoid eye contact with people who seem like they want to hurt you in a big way. That culture still exists in pockets in the United States. And the question is, how do we continue cultivating that? And how do we let these cities just kind of eat themselves and implode? Because that's what happens. You've noticed this. You've noticed that cities everywhere seem to be decaying at an exponential rate. And the clock is ticking to save maybe a loved one, maybe somebody who veered off course, who thought that they could build a great blog, but to do so, they would have to go to, Detroit. You can blog from anywhere. The internet exists a lot of places. Detroit is not a requirement to be a blogger. And plus, your blog's probably going to fail no matter what. So how about you just skip the Detroit part of your journey? There are a lot of thoughts to noodle on this one, but we're going to wrap this up. That's DarbyCast for you. That's WildCard Friday. Kyle, we're going to get in the car after this. We're going to go find a rodeo. Okay, pal?